Good morning, everyone. The presentation today, this morning, is the falsehood that the Jewish people are very rich and the falsehood that the Igbo people are very rich. Nobody in the world needs an introduction to who the Jewish people are. We began to find the term, the Jews, in the New Testament. Not that it did not appear in the Hebrew Bible, it did, but in the New Testament it became the more used identification for the people of Israel. So it is a term that people recognize more readily than the term Igbo. Igbo people are, if you want to use the term Jewish, I prefer to use the term Israelite or Hebrew. The Igbo people are the Jewish people in Nigeria. There is a falsehood that has gained currency and it's old. This falsehood is that the Jewish people are extremely rich, and it is presented in such a way that people will begin to think that the Jewish people are the only rich people in the world. And I'm here saying that it is a lie from the pit of hell. There are millions of extremely poor Jews. There are millions of extremely poor Igbos. I will get more into the Igbo question now. The Igbos are, in a way, the poorest Nigerians. I will explain why I say this. Land is a huge asset. Igbo land, the traditional land, homeland of the Igbos in Nigeria, is comparatively the smallest. The land of the Yoruba people is 6 times the land of the Igbo people. The land of the Hausa people, who host the Fulani people, is probably 30 times the size of Igbo land. Land is a huge asset. Anambra State is the richest Igbo state. It was in Anambra State, not in Plateau State. That is, the Plateau State is the state of so many ethnic groups in the middle of Nigeria, the Birom, so many of them. They are not Hausa or Fulani, and they are not Igbos. I lived there for a while. It was not in Plateau, it was not in Borno, which is also a multi-ethnic state, but dominated by the Kanuri, the former Berbers of North Africa, and the Shua Arabs. It was not in Borno, where I lived for a long time. It was not in Plateau. It was in Anambra, the richest Igbo state, that I saw houses made of thatch. In Igbo language, we call it Omakai. In the west of Anambra. As at when I went there about 18 years ago, 90% of the houses were made of thatch. And as Igbos, we know that the wretched of the wretched make their houses of thatch. If Igbos are as rich, as people say, you wouldn't have 98% of the houses in the richest Igbo state made of thatch. And this falsehood that the Igbos are rich has been around for as long as nobody can remember, and is a false belief that is held by the high and the mighty. No less a person than the Ooni of Ife, a Yoruba king, came out with it a few years ago, that the Igbos know the secret of making money. Meanwhile, using just one indices that I mentioned, one indice that I mentioned, land, the Yorubas are much more wealthier than the Igbos. And let us call a spade a spade. The Yorubas, alongside the Fulani, have ruled Nigeria for most of its history since the British, even before the British left. And in Nigeria, the easiest and the quickest way of becoming the billionaire is by being in government. The Igbos have been effectively sidelined from the government. So what happens is that they pick the crumbs that fall from the tables of the Yorubas and the Fulanis. And religion is also a vital factor in Nigeria. There are at least 100 Nigerian pastors that are naira multi-billionaires and dollar more than 50 that will be dollar billionaires. All of them are Yoruba. But the Oni of Ife talks about Igbos having the secret of making money. And the Oni of Ife did not invent this. This is an old anti-Semitic creed that people that hate the Jews developed in order to incite the populations against the Jews. When you hear that a group has money, the group becomes targeted, or that a group knows how to make money, you look at that group with suspicion. That is what is playing out here. And I just use this opportunity to tell you that it is a lie from the pit of hell. Have a beautiful day.